All right, so here in this is exercise 6. We're still using that interactive. We're just gonna this time rather than a hover effect, we're gonna use the selection. Now, the selection is when you hover and you click on either the trigger or the back trigger there, okay, depending on how your controller is set up. So this is different than a hover. A hover in my, if we were doing hovering for HTML, for a web page, this is hovering, but I technically haven't clicked on it yet. Now, if you remember in CSS, we had something called the active. That would kind of be like the actual selection. So I could set it that if I actually click on it, it should turn purple. If I click, see how it turns purple there. Okay. All right, so oops, I misspelled Google. That's why that didn't do anything. All right, so let's go back here. And I have a couple of objects here. I have a red cube, a purple cube, and I have a flat that has a little picture of music on it. And I'm going to select this one here. And let's go back and use the XR simple interactable. And let's also set this to everything so that it can work with our array interactor. And this time, rather than working with hover, let's keep scrolling to where it says select. Okay. Now this means rather than hovering, the user has to actually hit the select button or the to get this in or to do something. And this time, let's take this. This is the select interaction. And once again, let's change its color. I'm going to say mesh renderer material, and why don't we set that material to, I don't know, yellow. Okay. Now, if I were to save and run this and hit the select, it would turn yellow, but then once again, it would just stay yellow forever. What I need to do is set up a trigger or something to happen when I stop selecting it, when I release the trigger button here. And that's the select ended. Okay. So what I'm going to do is let's set this back to red when we're done. And so what I'm going to do is say, okay, let's take, when we stop selecting, let's take this and let's play around with the material and let's set that back to gray. Okay. Now, we've been playing around with like changing colors. There's other things we could do. So I have a script here called delete object. Okay. It's basically a simple code that I wrote, and I created my own function. Remember, we talked about functions a couple weeks ago when we talked about C#, and I called it delete object from world. And what it's doing is using a Unity function called destroy. What destroy does is it will destroy or remove an object from the game world while it's running. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this code and I'm going to apply it to this purple cube called collect interaction as such. And I'm going to add that simple interactor. And let's set interaction layer mask to everything. And what I'm going to do is when I hit select, rather than changing the color of the material or even a different object, I'm going to tell it to run this script, which is basically going to delete it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is the script is being applied directly to this object. It's right there, right? So what I'm going to do is take this object and I'm going to pull that function from it. So it's under delete object. And then the script I wrote is called delete object from world. So what happens is when the user triggers it, it should remove that object. Okay. I don't technically have to do this part because once it's gone, I guess I could write another script to bring it back, but I'm not going to do that. But, so in this case, because we're not doing anything, it's just going to be gone forever. Okay. Here's another one, kind of relating back to what we did. If you remember, we talked about when we talk about C#, how there are objects or there's objects we can take advantage or variable types, sorry, that you can take advantage of in in Unity, and one is called an audio source. So I created a variable called sound effect, and I'm basically grabbing the audio source component and basically making this into a music object. And then I have another function that I built that basically telling C# to play whatever is in the sound file. Now, what I'm going to do is I have this thing over here. Let's give it a second to update the code. Oops. All right. So I've actually already applied the audio. So I have this audio file. This is some music. Some old retro kind of music. Okay, and what I want to do is I want that music to play when someone interacts with this object here. So what I'm going to do is I've already added the audio, and I'm going to add this script to it, to this object here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is let's add in that simple interactor. And let's set this to everything, just like the other two. And once again, let's go to select. And I'm going to drag in the music player object because that's this thing, and this is where the audio source and the script is running. Yeah. And what I'm going to do is that's going to pull in this script, and I can run that function or this is running my C# script. That's the name of the script, play music. This is the function I built inside of it called play audio. And then so when I use the select button here and I point and I, do that, it should turn on the music. Now, what I really should do is probably write another function to turn the music off. So this would turn the music on, but it wouldn't, it would just stay on until the music runs out. I might run another function that turns it off. So at the moment, and maybe I'd set that to like select exit, or I could maybe write a function where like you keep track of, you sort of toggle it, you figure out, what, how many times you've done this, and you kind of go on, off, or something like that. But for now, that's not how I wrote the code, but you could do something like that. So you could see why you might want to do this. You could, remember in our frame VR worlds, we had those little music that had a little, play button and stop button. You could write your own thing to do that here in Unity. This is just an image I found and I applied it. You could write a little script, and this is basically setting it up so that anytime someone were to select it, it could turn this music on. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go into the headset and show you this all in action. All right, everyone. So in this one, I got my ray indicators here, and we're going to, we set up the selecting. So selecting is usually when you use the trigger. So this is right now I'm hovering. I didn't actually set up a hover on this particular item that's interactable, but if I press on my trigger, you can see that my cube, the red cube, is changing. In this case, it's changing to being highlighted yellow. This one on the purple, what I did is I actually added a script, and we went over this in the video, but what the script basically does is it uses the destroy command to remove this item. So when I trigger it by using the selection, it literally deletes it. Over here, this is a plane that I added some music to, and there's a little script on it that when someone selects it, it's going to run a function that basically plays the music. So when I press select, it plays the music. Now I should have actually made a function to stop it, which I didn't, but you get the idea.